The following program is part of Cable in the Classroom, a free service of the cable communications industry and your local cable company.
Hi, I'm Reese Davis. ESPN is proud to present this commercial-free presentation of SportsFigures, where science and math meet sports. Today, BMX superstar Dave Mira pulls some G's with our Greg Abbey.
Okay, Dave, check this out, man. All right, listen, we're going to build this 200-foot entrance ramp, all right, into this quarter pipe here. Okay, you get going like 100 miles per hour, wham! Extreme air, huh? What do you think?
No, it's not going to happen.
No. Think of all the crazy tricks you could do up that high. I mean, they'd have to call air traffic control.
Yeah, to airlift you to the hospital. It's not going to happen.
You don't think about it. Faster, higher. It makes perfect sense.
Oh, it makes perfect sense,
right.
but your legs, arms, your bike, I mean, you would crush. There's no way you could sustain those G's. That's where it all comes down to. Too many G's.
G's?
G's.
Too many G's?
Too many G's.
What the heck are G's?
SportsFigures, put your brain in the game.
BMX riders get some really big air off the vert, and the higher they go, the more time they have to do a 900 or a tail whip. Usually riders go between 4 and 10 feet above the rim.
So why not higher? If you went like 30 feet above the rim, the stunts could get totally gonzo, like 2700s instead of 9s. I mean, imagine a quadruple backflip. That'd be totally cool. To go higher off the vert is simple. You just have to get going faster. Like, if you built a 200-foot entrance ramp, you could get going like 100 miles per hour and totally fly. There'd be UFO reports about you.
Whoa! If anyone could ride a vert like that, it'd be this guy, BMX rider Dave Mira. Nicknamed Miracle Boy, Dave has won more X Games gold medals than any competitor in X Games history. So I think it's safe to say that Dave here is up on big air. Okay, so Dave, why can't you just fly higher by going like, all right, how about 100 miles per hour? Just right off the vert, right? You get a lot of air.
Sounds good, but do you think if you hit this ramp at 100 miles an hour, it'll collapse you, your bike, probably the ramp too?
I don't get it. That's weird. Why?
That's something like G's.
You've probably heard the expression pulling G's. Fighter pilots, stunt pilots, and astronauts, they pull a lot of G's. Amusement parks advertise the G's of a ride. And BMX riders in the vert, they pull a lot of G's too. Whoa! Right now, I'm pulling 1 G, and so are you. And whether you're sitting or standing, you're under the force of a G. That force is the force of gravity pulling you down to Earth. That's called weight. Weight is a force, but we don't usually notice it, right? Well, it's because we're used to it. But if you've been waiting online for an hour, your legs and your feet start to hurt. You're feeling the force of gravity pulling you down. And if you've been sitting for a while, your butt starts to get tired, thanks to gravity. 24/7, 365 days a year, gravity is pulling you down. In an equation, gravity looks like this, a lowercase g. That's the rate gravity accelerates any falling object, 9.8 meters per second every second. So whether it's me or this watermelon, gravity accelerates us both at 9.8 meters per second every second.
Weight is different for everybody, even though G is the same, because it depends on your particular body mass. To figure out weight, we multiply mass times acceleration due to gravity. More mass, same acceleration due to gravity, greater weight.
But you can change gravity on you. Change your G's. Oh, sorry.
On a roller coaster, you really can feel the G's change. You know how when you go that first really big drop, you feel almost weightless, sort of like this. When you go around really sharp turns, you get pushed against the person next to you. Pardon me. Woo! And going up, well, that pushes you back into your seat. Those forces! I'm gonna hurl! Okay, so we know we experience these forces, but why?
It's not the speed. I mean, I can sit in a car going 60 miles per hour.
Or in an airplane going 600 miles per hour and not feel any force at all. So where do the forces come from?
G-forces change because of one thing: acceleration.
You can see G-force at work with an accelerometer like this. When you accelerate in a car, you increase the G-force in a horizontal direction. The more you accelerate, the more force you feel. But once you get up to a constant speed, there's no force. Slowing down is an acceleration too. Slowing down gradually produces hardly any force at all. Stopping fast produces a lot of force. How fast you change your velocity is called rate of acceleration. If I were to drop this bike, it would increase its speed, or accelerate, 9.8 meters per second for every second it falls.
At the end of the first second of falling, an object is traveling 9.8 meters per second. At the end of the next second, it's traveling 19.6 meters per second. And by the end of the third second, 29.4 meters per second. When Dave here stops ascending, gravity pulls him down at 9.8 meters per second squared. Of course, he's not fallen very long. When a roller coaster goes down that first big drop that's falling, there's no force from the seat to keep you from falling too. You experience no G's, or 0 G's, as you fall.
When NASA trains astronauts, they simulate weightlessness in an airplane affectionately referred to as the vomit comet. Ugh.
The plane flies in a giant parabola, the same arc as if you threw a baseball. The plane and everything in it are falling to Earth. Everything appears weightless. The speed is changing by 9.8 meters per second every second. If you stepped on a scale, it would read 0. The scale isn't holding you up. It isn't preventing you from falling.
Of course, your lunch is feeling 0 G too.
If you stand on a scale in an elevator, you can see your weight increase when it accelerates up. You can just divide your rate of acceleration by 9.8 meters per second squared to find out how many additional G's of force there are. If it accelerated at 29.4 meters per second squared, that'd be 3 G's of force. 3 G's means you have an apparent weight 3 times your normal weight. Fighter pilots often experience sustained periods under large G forces.
What if I told you Dave is undergoing as many G's as a fighter pilot?
So far, we've been looking at linear acceleration, but for the vert, we need to be able to figure out a turn, how fast something changes direction.
Yeah, because you change directions in the transition, and you're changing velocity.
Right, and that acceleration is what creates the G's.
So I guess you need the speed.
And how much the direction changes.
Well, how would we find that? Well, think about it. A rider enters the transition in this direction and ends in this direction.
Well, the change is 90 degrees. Could we use that?
The change here is 90 degrees too, but the acceleration would be pretty severe if I rode my bike into it.
We need to know the shape of the change, like how gradual it is.
So, what's the shape of the transition?
Well, it's curved, kind of like a circle.
The radius determines the size of a circle.
Right, so we're going to use radius and velocity to figure out the acceleration.
To figure out acceleration in a curve, we use a different equation. We're still looking at a change of velocity over time, but because it involves direction, we have to use vectors. The time gets embedded in the geometry, so we end up with a mathematical equation for an object moving in a circle that looks like this. Acceleration equals velocity squared divided by radius of the circle.
And that will tell us what kind of G-forces the rider is experiencing. Now, the first thing we need to find out is how fast they're going through the transition.
Well, once we get up to speed, we're going about 30 miles an hour.
Wow, that's pretty fast. Now, what about the transition? What's the radius?
A standard vert ramp has an 11-foot radius.
Okay, so that's sort of confusing, the idea of radius, right?
Just think of it like a slice out of a circle. If you had a circle with an 11-foot radius, You took a quarter from that circle.
You'd have it. Okay, now we have it. We have velocity and radius.
All we have to do is solve for A, acceleration. 13.4 meters per second squared is 179.5 meters squared per second squared, divided by the radius, 3.3 meters, and we get an acceleration of 54.4 meters per second. To find out how many G's that is, we just do what we did before. Divide by 9.8 meters per second. That's 5.5 G's in addition to the 1 G we already feel. The total force on Dave is 6.5 G's of force.
That's insane. In this transition here, the rider is experiencing a force equal to 6.5 times his weight. See, it's not weight that a rider feels, it's a force. For any object traveling in a circle, there's a net force towards the center of the circle. For the ball, the force is exerted by the string. The vert is what exerts a force on the bike to keep it moving in a circle, and that force is passed on to Dave. That's the result of the acceleration, force.
So how much do you weigh?
160 pounds.
Okay, so your weight in the transition would be 6.5 times that, or 1,040 pounds. So do you feel that force?
When I'm going 30 miles an hour and I'm coming into an 11-foot radius,
right,
I'm in the transition for about a quarter second, where a fighter pilot might be taking a loop for, 10 seconds.
Right,
so I guess there's a difference.
Quick, there's not enough time to really feel those forces.
Probably so.
But you can see the force Dave's under in the transition just by looking at his tire.
There are riders that are shooting higher off the vert, right? Like you got 19 feet, is that right?
Yeah, I hit an 18-foot tall ramp and went 19 feet over the top of that, and that's only because it had a larger radius, meaning I could hit it going a lot faster than I could for this.
That makes sense. If you wanted to go faster and get bigger air, you could get less G-force by making the transition bigger. That would give you more time to change the velocity, so smaller acceleration.
What about Matt Hoffman? Now, what was the jump he did?
Matt had a 24-foot tall ramp, got towed by a motorcycle around 60 miles an hour and went, I think, 26 and a half, 27.
For Matt Hoffman's record jump, he was going 26.8 meters per second. The 22-foot radius of the transition is 6.7 meters. Working it out, we get an acceleration of 107.2 meters per second squared, and a gonzo 10.9 Gs plus 1 G is 11.9 Gs. But he flew 26.5 feet above a 24-foot high ramp. He's 50 feet up.
Yeah!
Do you see, are the ramps just going to keep getting bigger in the competitions?
You know what, time will tell. You never know. I mean, progression's there, and if riders want to go bigger and bigger, they're gonna make the biggest ramp they can.
Has it changed over time?
When I started competing in '87, ramps were 8-foot radiuses, which is real similar to down there. That's what everybody rode.
Right.
And now they're 11-foot radius, 2 feet of vert, 13 feet tall. I'm kind of into like the 10 foot,
Right.
But
you like keeping it sort of
it's what everybody
middle
wants,
there,
man.
right?
Big ramps.
They want to see it higher.
Totally.
Okay, cool.
Okay, you guys, so what did we learn?
That gravity pulls us down with acceleration of 1G all the time.
1G is basically your weight. The mass times gravity's acceleration.
The acceleration due to gravity, which is 9.8 meters per second squared.
Acceleration can change the apparent force of gravity, making you feel heavier or lighter.
To figure out acceleration in a curve, we use the equation acceleration equals velocity squared divided by radius.
And that BMX riders in the vert pull some pretty big Gs.
Oh, I think I pulled something. It might have been a G, it might have been my hamstring, I'm not sure.
Well, that's it. We'd like to thank our riders, Dave Mira, Jimmy Hale, and Dave Healy, and of course our students, Greg, Emma, Kristen, and Keith from Cooper City High School, for helping us out today on ESPN Sports Figures Gravity Check. Whoa.
We'd like to thank today's athletes for donating their time to help put your brain in the game. I'm Reese Davis, and we'll see you next time on Sports Figures.
ESPN SportsFigures is presented commercial-free for educators to tape and use in the classroom.
For a free teacher's curriculum, to order the SportsFigures series, or if you have questions or comments,
visit our website at espnsportsfigures.com.
You can also call 1-800-565-0452.
This has been a presentation of ESPN, the worldwide leader in sports. For more, log on to espn.com.
SportsFigures. Put your brain in the game.
The preceding program is part of Cable in the Classroom, a free service of the cable telecommunications industry and your local cable company.